we will have Audrey Gadzekpo, Professor of Communication Studies, School of Information and Communication Studies, University of Ghana. Bishop Dr. Suzanne Enti. She's the COO and head of Legal Action Chapel International and head of school Dominion Christian Academy. Caroline Anipa is media and communications consultant. And we'll also have, of course, Nana Kwesi Jana Pente is a consultant in communication, media and culture. We'll also have Sheikh Arimiyao Shaibu, is a member of the National Peace Council, Kodeo, and Chief Imam's Advisory Board and spokesperson for the National Chief Imam. And of course, George Sapong is Executive Secretary, National Media Commission. Will also be a speaker today here on the George King Speaker Series. We'll start off. So, let's begin with Professor Audrey Gadzekpo. She's a professor of communication studies at the Department of Communication Studies and former dean of the School of Information and Communication Studies at the University of Ghana. She has more than 30 solid years of experience in teaching, research, and advocacy, primarily on media, gender development, and governance issues, and some 35 years of experience as a media practitioner. She obtained a doctorate degree in African Studies from the University of Birmingham, UK, and Master of Arts in Communications from Brigham Young University, Utah, USA, and a Bachelor of Arts in English from the University of Ghana. She has served on numerous boards and committees within and outside the University of Ghana, and is currently chairperson of the board of the Center for Democratic Development, CDD, Ghana. She is also patron to Alliance for Women in Media and serves on a number of other boards, including Tema International School and the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, Abuja, Nigeria. Thank you so very much, Professor Audrey Gadzekpo. Please, let's hear you in the next 10, 15 minutes.
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to everybody listening. This is a really important discussion. I listened intently to what Sir Sam Jonah had to say. I listened to the exchange between you, MFA, and Nana Jana Penteng. And there is a certain sense, I would say, of trepidation, I would say a little bit of pessimism about the state of affairs in Ghana. But I like to think of myself as an optimist and to look at the glass being half full rather than half empty. And that will be my starting point. And in doing that, I want to say that there's a lot at stake here because this is our 9th time since we started our democratic journey. And it's resulted, and this is an optimist in me, pointing out that it's resulted in 3 transitions, successful transitions of power from one political party to the other of our 2 dominant parties. We wish we had more parties, but the reality is that we have 2 dominant parties that keep alternating power. Still, what it tells us is that we do have some semblance of democracy, and we are using the democratic process to alternate power peacefully, even though, of course, I must note that our elections, while largely peaceful, have been contested. We've had 2 court cases, and each of the parties, 2 dominant parties, have had a court to challenge the results. It's also been marred by disturbing incidents of violence and misbehavior. So those are challenges, but they are challenges that we have to try and overcome, not to sort of sink into a deep well of depression, because we are half there. Democracy, as we see, even looking at the more so-called more mature democracies, is always a work in process. And it's always subject to possibilities of reversals. So we must be vigilant. And that's where the media comes in, because they are part of the stakeholders that ensure that we have quality, credible elections. They're just one of many, but they are an important stakeholder. I like when Anna Jana Penton made the point, because it's one of the things I wanted to flag, that we have a really vast media landscape. We have now more than 700 FM stations, hundreds of TV stations, print publications, and of course, a wide variety of online publications. And so it is clear that the media is not a monolith, and so that there are lots of challenges, because there are going to be bad actors in the media, but also good actors in the media. What we again ought to be pressing for and supporting is the kind of media architecture where the vast majority, particularly those who reach the vast number of our people, are credible. As for the bad media people, they'll be there. But if the good media outweighs the bad media, then of course they'll be able to tackle the task that they have to take in order to ensure that our elections are credible and that our democracy stays on course. We know from the experience of other countries the kinds of roles that the media can play in derailing democracy. And again, whilst you can't blame only the media, there have been instances where the media have been seen as one of the main reasons why the violence was escalated in parts of certain countries, etc., etc. So it's important to sort of have those nuances and to remember that the media matter during elections for several reasons. First of all, they have a public service duty to contribute to free and fair, credible elections. They have a contribution to make. They have a contribution to help mitigate tensions and contestations and violence that has come to be associated with our elections, unfortunately. And how do they do that? They have an informational and educational role. I mean, without the media, and broadly defined, including now even social media, we wouldn't have enough voter education, for example. So they're a vehicle, a platform through which voters can be about parties, programs, elections, so that the voters behave like citizens are expected to behave, have informed information in order to make informed decisions. Whether or not they do that is another matter, but at least the media is there to contribute to this process, informing the electorate also about the electoral system and the arrangements, also being that platform that can be used as a vehicle for debate. And crucially also, and we've seen it in several elections, they also play a key role in reporting on election results, and then of course their surveillance watchdog role, which they play, reporting on how the elections are going, even on election day. And in fact, I recall a lecture that Dr. Farijan, who was our former electoral commissioner, gave many years ago about how the media has become very crucial in the sense that since they are able to report on election day in particular what is going wrong so that it can be corrected. And we see instances of responsiveness on the part of the electoral authorities cooperating with the media. I really hope that that kind of collaboration continues. They of course, sometimes scrutinize, not sometimes, they do scrutinize candidates, parties, their agenda, and comment on it, and take them on if they think that, there are certain things in their agenda or certain behaviors that ought to be called out. And of course, and we've seen, again, a lot of reports leading up to the elections, them reporting or giving voice to concerns about the electoral arrangements, especially when they work with CSOs. And the accountability role also is an important one also. So they bring transparency, and that's important. They build voter confidence in the process in the ways in which they report. Okay, they can build, or they can undermine the process in the ways that they report so that people may not even go to the polls. Our last elections, I read that the voter turnout was 80%. That is fantastic. How do you maintain this voter turnout? Because if people are pessimistic, if people are disillusioned, they won't go to the polls. We'll have a poor voter turnout. And I think that the media has a role in helping to encourage voter turnout. And so in the end, what does the media do as an industry? They're a collective pressure group on the election authorities, on the candidates, on the political parties. And they must set the right agenda, the right tone in how they report on these things, even if they're reporting on wrongdoing. How do you set the tone so that it can be corrected, so that it's fair and balanced? And it becomes even more important, the media's ability to play these roles that I have set out when elections are as close as they were the last time we went to the polls, and as I imagine they're going to be this time around. We're going to have to rely on the media to give us a sense of really what is going on. As for the political parties, because they are in close contestation, they are likely to confuse us as to the facts of what's going on. But we think that the media is an honest broker. The media is an independent observer, and perhaps we can go to them. Although, again, my caveat is that it's not every media organization that can be credible. We need people, citizens, to say, there are these media organizations that I know by all means when I tune into them, or I read them, or I watch them, I can get the truth about what's going on. I can have informed decisions. When we look at what the observer missions in particular, and perhaps even academics, have said about past media performances in our elections, and like I said, this is the 9th time we're going, so there's plenty of evidence. You see that the reviews are mixed. And I want to controversially, because of the tone that was set about the problems with the media, but I want to controversially say that when you look at it, those reports, you see that the reports indicate that the media are improving on how they report, they cover elections. And again, you have to remember that the elections are covered from now, even before now, right to the polling day and afterwards. So it's a long process. We don't have a defined campaign season. So we can safely conclude that the media is already doing their job. And you see that they have been praised for providing access to contenders, including minor parties. Sometimes there are disputes, but minor parties, minor candidates do get a voice in the media, do get access to media, even though sometimes the coverage is dominated by the two dominant parties, NPP and NDC. I mean, and there will always be, again, a clamor for, I haven't been given enough visibility. The incumbents are going to exploit the power of incumbency. But we can see a lot of progress has been made, particularly commending GBC, because at the beginning of the democratic process, we criticized a lot the state-owned media for pandering to the incumbent. Now we see a balancing out. that's good, and we need to continue to build on that. They provide civic education and all of that. And of course, they note how they sometimes flag and report on what may be going wrong. And so they've been very flattering. Since I don't have a lot of time, I will, however, talk about the negative as well. The extreme polarization and partisanship that some media organizations display is still a cause for concern, okay? The good thing about it is that we have what, in my mind, I consider other more credible, stronger voices, and I'm not pandering to Joy, certainly one of the national media that can counter some of these more polarized partisan voices. Except, of course, when people go into their echo chambers, they're not listening to people that don't confirm their own biases. That's another thing. We know that the Media Foundation for West Africa conducts monitoring of media during election times for language, and has called out persistently strong language, personal attacks, and again, some of these observer reports know that as well, blurring out some, blurring of editorial lines between, opinion and fact, poor fact checking, and I'm happy that Caroline Anipa is on this panel because she probably can expand a little bit on that, in factual reporting and the lack of depth and examination of issues, etc. So again, we know that they find that a problem. Now, what should we be doing? I think that the EU, for example, and Cordeo, for example, in their last report, noted that, there was still a lack, even though they praised the media, there was still a lack of enforcement of media journalistic standards. But importantly also, the appropriate authority to empower regulatory bodies to sanction this breach of standards. Abusive language in the media, for example, sometimes fake news and misinformation, media bias, and all of that. Now, we seem not to be able to have the kind of media regulation framework that will respect the freedom of the media and at the same time be able to encourage better standards, okay? And if that continues, you will see even greater danger of outside forces supported by citizens saying, this is too much. Let us curb some of the media's powers, and that's dangerous. And of course, they'll curb it through the kinds of legislation we don't want to see. Remember that in some countries, they have an internet blackout during election days, election periods, and we think that's not justified. We had memories of that in the past. It didn't come to fruition, but I think that it's a real danger of the new challenge of social media, of disinformation. Think about even the US's experience and the fact that post the elections that brought President Trump into power in 2016, they found that there was a lot of online activity by foreign actors that interfered in the elections and probably produced those kind of outcomes that the Americans had to grapple with and are still grappling with it. So it's a bit of a problem for us. Whilst we want to celebrate the fact that people can mobilize digital media in elections to extend and broaden our knowledge and information, and candidates also, all of the wonderful things. There's also that negative side.
All right.
And compounded by the fact that our digital media literacy rate is low. So am I out of time?
Yes, I think you do. And,
or do I have 1 minute to wrap up?
You could go ahead, please. We wanted to ask you a question, myself and MFA,
Okay.
and give you just 1 minute each to respond to them.
Okay, so do you want to ask the question now, or do you want me to finish my submission?
Please finish in a minute.
Okay, so in a minute, I'd like to say that one of the ways in which we need to improve the media's credibility is to support them to fact check and verify. It's imperative in these days of social media, and sometimes in the haste of publishing, a lot of traditional media people just go online. I like to think of traditional media as a place where if I hear something on social media, I'll go and verify on traditional media. So it's important that traditional media keeps their quality control role. It's important that we remind journalists of the professional codes and standards. GJA has guidelines, NMC has guidelines, GIBA has guidelines, so that the media can set an agenda for nonviolent and constructive quality elections, act as better gatekeepers by sifting the chaff from the corn, act as vehicles through which peace dialogue and messages can be amplified, and finally, telling the truth, investigating the hidden, explaining the background, presenting the facts, giving us better analysis so that as voters we can make informed decisions. So thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you very much. We have very limited time, but we still cannot let you go without these two questions, one from me and one from MFA. And I was privileged to be on the high-level panel at the Ambassador to Germany's residence on the eve of the World Press Freedom Day. And you shared in the concern expressed by Sir Sam Jonah about his doubts about the media's ability to do a good job to ensure credible and peaceful elections. You have concerns also about self-censorship. Yet, do I hear you say we have 747 radio station licenses, although we have 550 who are in operation. We have 175 or 4 TV stations. Their job is to reflect the society. If the parties in the elections are throwing vitriol and they are simply reflecting it, are you asking that they should self-censor?
No, Samson, I'm not asking that they should self-censor. I'm asking that they moderate those. Sometimes I have to say the media themselves empanel people because they want that kind of sensational thing. That's an issue. So how the media empanels people so that in your programs you don't have that vitriol is one. Yes, you can decide that some things that our politicians say are not fit to air, and I'm not going to give them my platform to do that. So it's not self-censorship. Right. Self-censorship is when you have to write or cover or do things in order to advance a larger public good. You don't do it. Okay?
Well, I get the sense that in spite of the fears...
Vitriol doesn't help.
Okay. Listening to you, even though that you still have fears, I see that at least you have some hope still in the media. But I want to find out, at least you made reference to the Media Foundation for West Africa calling out media, at least during political season, amongst others. Over the period, would you say that it's been deterrent enough? Has it helped improve the situation? Calling out bad media?
I think that, and I wish Media Foundation for West Africa were on the panel to confirm this, but I think that it has helped. It is a deterrent, particularly for certain, you see, there are two people who are at fault here. Both the politicians say the inappropriate things that is carried in the media and the media that carries it. And I think that the Media Foundation's program acts as a sort of a check. It doesn't mean that it will completely eliminate it. But in the course of the season, as they continue to highlight and expose those that are particularly egregious, you see that those characters sort of get out of the media limelight. So really, they may do it on other platforms, but they don't do it through the media. They don't use the media, or they reduce the way they use the media in that manner. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Audrey Gadzekpo, and keep training us the way you do so that we will be responsible and play our part in ensuring that our country develops. Thank you so very much. Emefa.
Well, go on to